have the extra layer of.
You see it?
Mm-mm.
You see it?
No, you can't do it. I hope my poor mother wasn't watching, because she does watch the live stream. Does she? She'll just, my mom watches to critique my hair and whatever I say and my outfit. She doesn't. But then I got in everybody's way because I'm like, I'm leaving.
Where the other person with white hair was the guy I was with. It's always easy to find him for me. All right, you guys ready?
Mhm.
All right, calling our board meeting, our informal conference back to order. It is 1:08 on 8/20 of 24. Just for the record, for the recording, Dr. Richmond has joined us back this afternoon for our meeting. First item up is in the matter of Christine Barr, PDO 8102 in the medicine shop, AR 18562. Counselor, you want to tell us who you are and introduce your client? You stay seated, please. And if you'll hit the push button, it'll turn green for go. That's all right now, but
Yes, I should have
we'll have that
known.
going forward. Usually I do a quick introduction of kind of who you're talking to, since informal rather than formal. On this side of the table, we're all staff members here at the Board of Pharmacy offices. Myself, Dr. Brendan McCready, who's our assistant director, Miss Ashley Bell's legal counsel. We've got two of our inspector investigators with us, Dr. Lindsay Tankersley and Dr. Brandon Holland. On the other side of the table, we have four of our pharmacy board members, Dr. Clint Boone, Dr. Lenore Newsom, who's the chair of the informal committee, Dr. Brian Jolly, and Dr. Rodney Richmond. What I also generally do is explain, because this is an informal conference, it's much more like mediation for attorneys, and it's a more open conversation back and forth across the table than a formal hearing. At the end of our conversation day, the board members are going to come up with some suggestion for what they want to do, given the conversation we've had. The most important thing for you, Chrissy, is you can either agree or disagree with what they come up with. And it's not something that we put you on the spot right here and say, agree or disagree. We would reduce it to writing, and then we would send it to you for you and your legal counsel to review it, see if you have any follow-up questions before you make a decision. If you agree with it, we go directly with whatever the board members have asked us to do. Disagree is basically taking a shot and say that you'd prefer to have a formal hearing before the full board at a later date rather than the informal kind of mediation process. So I was asked, you guys know why you're here today?
Yes.
Any question about how it works? Okay. If at any point you have a question, or if you and Jeff need to have a sidebar or anything like that, get our attention. If you need to ask us a question, we'll do our best to answer it back. If you guys need to talk to each other or something, or have a timeout, let us know and we'll do that as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to staff for a brief overview, and then I think the board is going to want to interact with you guys.
As you'll recall, when Dr. Barr was here at the formal hearing earlier this year, part of the board's order was that staff do an inspection of the medicine shop within 3 months. So Dr. Holland and Dr. Tankersley did that on July 16th. The order and notice of hearing is here for guidance. I'm not asking you to make findings of fact on that. But we are here to discuss the results of that inspection. The inspectors documented several observations. One, there were some expired medications in the active inventory, some of which dated back to 2022. Shipping records indicating prescription products were mailed into the state of Louisiana, which would be a violation because Dr. Barr is not licensed in Louisiana or permitted to do that. They found non-sterile compounding records demonstrating that lot numbers and expiration dates of all the ingredients were not documented as required by USP 797 and Pharmacy Rules 0702002H and J. They observed non-sterile compounding records for a product called dry socket goo, in which the label did not list the ingredients as required by USP 797 and our Rule 0702002F and 0702002I. The non-sterile compounding records for dry socket goo was prepared with a laboratory grade active pharmaceutical ingredient instead of the pharmaceutical grade as required by USP 797 and our Rule 0702002F. They additionally observed non-sterile compounding records that demonstrated a lack of proper beyond use date assignments as required by 795 and Pharmacy Rule 0702002H6B3I and 0702002I. Compounding documentation demonstrated preparation of commercially available products in violation of our Rule 0702002A, and then accepted or processed fax prescriptions for controlled substances were found without a manual signature in violation of 21 CFR 130605D and our Rule 04000010. And Dr. Tankersley and Dr. Holland are here if you have any questions about their inspection. The inspection report is behind the tab, behind the order notice of hearing, so you can have that for review. Additionally, in your packet, as part of the board's order, you order Dr. Barr to submit monthly reports. So you also have in your packet her first report and her second report. Her second report was submitted after the inspection and sort of addresses some of the issues that Dr. Tankersley and Dr. Holland found in their inspection. And additionally, there's some correspondence between Dr. Barr and the board staff.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I'd like to just say I am disappointed in myself that I'm taking up y'all's time again today. I really never wanted to be back in this room. I would love to see y'all outside of this room, but not back in this room. I have addressed everything that was on the inspection and have new protocol and have reprimanded, and I fully own all that's in here. But I hope I can answer some questions as to why some of these things happened.
Have you done any corrections?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay, will you tell us about what you've done?
Okay, the expired drugs, I had pulled a bunch of expired drugs off of the shelf and was in the process of sending them back to PharmaLink, and they were in a box. And one of my lovely techs just saw drugs in a box and put them back on the shelf. I have now removed everything that expires between now and the end of the year has been stickered with color-coded stickers so that we can easily know when it expires. I've also got charts at the end of each aisle that I know who cleaned and who pulled the expireds off of that aisle, so that I can, if I find an expired, I know who to go to and say, hey, we overlooked this. Why did we overlook this? So all of my expireds have been sent back to PharmaLink. All of the ones that are going to expire in September are going to be pulled this month. And we have a system in place to start stickering at certain months for each month as it comes along.
Okay. And what have you done to address the compounding issues?
The compounding issues, I would check when she would pull the drugs, I would check that she pulled the correct compounding materials, and I would check the weights and amounts that were in there. And I did not go back behind her to make sure she put the lot and expiration date number on it, but now I go back and she can't weigh anything. until the lot and expiration date is on there. And then she can weigh it and I can come check it. And I go back through every week and check and make sure all the lot and expiration dates are there. I check the expiration dates to make sure the beyond use date is correct at the bottom. So there's a protocol hanging in the compounding lab with all of those instructions.
I think she can address also the mailing into Louisiana and also the unsigned prescription as well.
Okay, go ahead.
I had a patient who he works for a environmental company, and sometimes he's gone 6 to 8 weeks, and he is on anti-HIV medications that he likes to keep the same brand. So he said, I'm going to be gone for 6 to 8 weeks. My prescription's going to be run out. Can you mail this to me? And just doing a service for him, I mailed it to him, and that's my bad. And so now I've talked to him and I've said, I can't mail this to you no matter where you are. Because, this time he was in Louisiana. Next month he's in Alabama. I don't know where he's going after that. But anyway, I've talked to him and I've said, I can't mail this to you anymore. And he said a neighbor is going to come pick it up and mail it to him from them, not from us.
In the unsigned prescription.
Oh, the unsigned prescription was for a patient for testosterone compounded cream. Dr. Marks didn't sign it. I had called them and took it as a verbal and then sent it back and said, could y'all please sign this and send it back? This is the copy that was in January's folder. I don't know if that's the prescription in question because I wasn't told which prescription it was. But I went through, I did a whole report for June and May's prescriptions, and any of them that were faxed, I looked them up to make sure they were signed. And that's the only one that was in the computer not signed, but I found that it was signed. It just didn't get scanned in the computer.
And there, in addition to these items that she's addressed, these protocols she's put in place, I think there's one other oversight measure that you put in place. Can you tell them about that as far as your consulting?
Oh, I have a fellow pharmacist who is going to come in every other month and use the board inspection sheet and inspect my pharmacy, and I will include that in my monthly report. He's doing it as a favor to me. So that way there's different eyes, not just our eyes that we see everything every day. I'm going to use the board inspection report every month as well and start sending that with my other report of what else we're changing and doing at the pharmacy. But he's going to come in as a different set of eyes and do an inspection every other month, and I will include that in my report to the board. That way I have a fresh set of eyes that doesn't normally be in the store every day.
Does he have experience doing inspections, like a background, or just kind of follow the?
He owns 3 pharmacies, so it's Terry Perkins. So he agreed. I reached out to 2 or 3 different pharmacists that are in the group that we all exchange ideas with, and Terry said that he'd be happy to do it. So
You feel like he's been through enough inspections that he?
yes, I do. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I had a question for Dr. Holland. So I'm looking at the inspection report. Class A pharmacy, yes or no, is not checked. Is that because of what we were here for in June, or was there too many observations on this one?
That was really something Lindsay and I wanted to bring back to the office to see how we would want to proceed with that based on the number of deficiencies that would have been considered not a Class A pharmacy. But since we were instructed to return within that 90-day period, we were going there, doing that initial inspection as requested, and we wanted to bring that back to see what our guidance was from there.
And Dr. Jolly, Brandon and I decided to do this not collectively. We did independent inspections while we were there. I actually do have a no marked on mine. It is, I think I marked 7 deficiencies.
Okay.
And I think it's been a little bit, so I don't remember exactly. I think the last time you're going to inspect, you didn't actually get to finish because of everything that happened. So how many of these are repeated offenses? You know what I mean? Going back to, that'd probably been 3 years ago.
So from the
The last
2022 inspection that was conducted by Dr. Fain, there were actually no deficiencies marked on that inspection.
And that was 22.
Yes, I believe it was April of 2022, if I correctly recall.
April 5th, I have it.
I think that was part of the board's order last time that she couldn't have any interns.
Yeah.
So maybe that wasn't applicable at the inspection level.
You don't have any questions about Dr. Barr?
I mean, have they been to any sort of classes or
Yes, ma'am.
programs or?
Yes, ma'am. They've been to the LetCo class. Well, I only have one compounding tech and she's been to the LetCo class.
And when was that?
In 2019, I believe. Yes.
Does she do any continuing education to refresh herself with it?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
she's aware of 797,
Yes,
USP
ma'am.
797?
And we're gonna,
And 795?
yes, and I'm gonna make sure she keeps up to date on that. She is also my oldest daughter, so I have a little power there.
And when if you compound a product or you have somebody bring a prescription in, if you don't have it, do you transfer that prescription? How do you handle that?
If I don't have the ingredients, we try to acquire the ingredients. We try to order them from Letco or Mediska and then go from there. But if we don't have all the products and they need it, then we try to find them someplace else. Yes, ma'am.
So do you send them someplace else or do you borrow the compounded product?
Oh, no, I send them someplace else.
Okay, so you don't use somebody else. You don't do like central fill and let somebody else.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I have a few compounding questions to ask about your remediation plan for your compounding stuff. The one thing that I didn't hear you mention was double checking the expiration date of the APIs that your tech selected, which was one of the things that you walked me down, an estradiol hormone compound.
Yes, ma'am.
And we took each step in the process. And when we got to product selection, we reached in a shelf where there wasn't anything. I said, let's just move on. Then said, how did we get this expiration date? And you had properly applied the BUD dates that 797 would allow for had that estradiol not been expired for a year. So the biggest issue to me with the compounding was that expired APIs were being used to make compounds that were then assigned BUD dates simply based on when they were made.
Yes, ma'am.
Have we addressed that?
We've addressed that.
Have you done any recalls on those prescriptions that were sent out with those expired ingredients?
Yes, ma'am. I've talked to several of the patients. They were fine. And they know going forward that their expiration dates will be on their label.
Do you have any documentation of those conversations or
No,
recalls?
no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Other questions or discussion? And so you're keeping compounding logs?
Yes,
Have you
ma'am.
been doing that in the past?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right.
We've also gone back and looked up all the ingredients and the compounding book is all up to date. Because I keep all of our certificate of analysis in a file. So I went back and pulled all of them out and they have all the correct lot numbers and expiration dates on all the things we've made. No, ma'am, the estradiol that was made, the two patients that get that have had an allergic reaction to two different brands of generic of that. And so the doctor asked me if I could compound it in a different medium cream instead of the cream that was available. And that's documented in my computer. I believe there was a hydroxyzine that was on back order that I had 4 bottles on order. And I said, just send them to me, please, whenever they come in. Those came in the day after that prescription that I made for hydroxyzine was made. I don't remember if there was another one. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The amlodipine was for a veterinarian patient and they wanted it peanut butter flavored. And they just were trying it before they did anything else, and the veterinarian asked me if I would compound that. I know now I need to adjust the 1 milligram per mil needs to be a little bit different so that it's not commercially available.
Will you repeat that last sentence?
The amlodipine that's commercially available as Calersia
Uh-huh.
and Nerliqua, I believe. It was for a veterinary patient
Yes.
and they wanted it peanut butter flavored, not the flavor that was commercially available. So I made it peanut butter flavored, but next time we'll see, I mean, do they need the 1 milligram? If they do, they have to get it commercially. If not, if they need a 1.5 milligram per mil, then I can make them a 1.5 milligram.
There's some FDA guidance on essentially a copy that you probably need to go look at, because it becomes very difficult to say that this patient needs 1.5 milligrams and can only take a 1 milliliter dose versus they could just take a 1.5 milliliter dose.
Right.
And that's a specific product that has been in my thought process, somewhat aggressive about people trying to copy their products. And the sad thing is, enalapril, lisinopril, those, we all compounded them for years. It happened in hospitals, happened in retail for people that needed liquid, and we used the commercial products to do it. But then when they got, patent protection and FDA approval, it became a whole new ballgame of that. So there's probably a better argument that if there are flavoring agents that you don't need for an animal or hypersensitivity to it, that's what you would.
Xylitol is a perfect example. Gabapentin commercial has xylitol, which is deadly to a dog.
The dog.
So
Yeah. So the veterinarian probably has some other reason besides a concentration. Concentration is a really bad one on liquids because it's so adjustable.
Right.
But yeah, and then there's some that they like, their arguments like you don't need grape flavorants because you don't introduce grape flavoring to animals that grapes could be poisonous to,
Right.
that you avoid those types of flavor identification issues for them.
Has the inspection form changed since Dr. Fain was there last time?
no, sir.
And I guess I can ask Dr. Barr, would she have had a copy of that previous?
She does.
You do have a copy of the previous inspection report. I don't know. I'm just gonna say this is disappointing, and I'm just gonna lay out the reasons why. You were here in June. A large contingent of people, an unprecedented, as far as I know, issue that came before the board. And I won't go into, we all know about that. And you knew that we were going to be back. You knew that the staff was going to be back in within 3 months. Why would one of your first steps not be to go look at your inspection form and scrub that top to bottom and make sure that when the board staff came back in, that the Louisiana thing, okay, you were doing a favor, but expired meds, non-sterile records that are lacking, BUDs that weren't in compliance, some issues with some facts controlled substances prescriptions, like what was your?
I was actually working on them. It's just, I was working on expired drugs going back. Like I said, they got put back on the shelf. I've learned I've got to leave extremely large notes on things if I don't want somebody to touch something. The compounding log, I was getting there. I just was taking care of the pharmacy first. And I apologize. It slipped.
That case was hard for us to,
It was
to
hard.
make decisions on, because we're faced with a decision on whether to not let you be a pick, which could close down a pharmacy that's important for our community in North Little Rock. And it's personally disappointing to me that you're back in here with questionable, are you even a Class A pharmacy? And I think we're probably going to have to talk about that. So
Dr. Jolly, one thing I do want to say about the electronic signatures, that is something that tends to be, that has been an issue all around the state that I've been fighting for the last several years that I've been inspecting. When I'm going around, I'm trying to educate pharmacists on what an electronic signature looks like. I'm not a signature expert by any means, but I can look if it's hovering, if it's pixelated, if it's fuzzy. There are so many different things, but there is that corresponding responsibility that if it looks in any way that it's not manually signed, which DEA has actually sent out a notice, I believe in November of 21, maybe, as a reminder to all DEA registrants, they must be manually signed by a provider if it's a faxed or hard copy prescription. So the thing is, in a computer processing system, if you're not seeing these prescriptions back to back to have something compared against, it is quite difficult. So I do have an unfair advantage of coming in, being able to see these prescriptions back to back, and I can very quickly pick up on patterns to educate pharmacists on.
I would add to that vein that it is a common thing, though in a smaller pharmacy with smaller patient and a more close-knit community, you also have a lower number of prescribers. And to those signatures, you would think you would become accustomed to and you would recognize them with familiarity.
you said you had 7 non-compliance on your independent.
I had 6 and about 4 additional comments.
I don't want to throw us off track here.
And I also want to say, just real quick too, your pick standing is in probation now. And I just don't think it's good that you're back in.
I hate that I'm back.
I know you agree with that.
I do. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
don't think they've been provided her inspection, is I'm sure what he's about to say, so they don't have it. We combined them in office and delivered the one that. Did he get both of them?
I didn't get an inspection sheet until my notice of hearing.
They both included.
No, I just have Brandon's.
So there was a time when the inspection had no citation.
2022, yes, sir. April of 22.
An inspector that was neither of us.
But we have to assume that they're interchangeable.
Yes.
So other than what we know, we were here about the last time when the wheels fell off. Is that where everything went south or?
Yes, sir.
So
And I'm not blaming that whole ordeal on me being deficient in anything. But that did take a lot out of me.
well, but the fact that it was all going on for the duration of time that it was going on would suggest that you didn't have eyes on the operation as it should, and now things are being addressed and identified that are remedial, that frankly, if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing at PIC, there would not be this breadth of stuff happening.
Correct. But they have all been addressed and fixed.
I mean, what they found, or you have gone through with a fine tooth comb?
I have gone through the inspection sheet with a fine tooth comb and everything is,
Fines.
yes, and it's all been addressed and fixed. But that's why I'm having Terry come in and say, I want somebody else to come through and look at it and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Relative to the regulations, how comprehensive is the inspection form in terms of all things that need to be done? Or are these just the most important?
I think that's fairly open for interpretation, really, on how you look at the inspection. There, like, for instance, the controlled and legend drugs end date and labeled, all out dates isolated. That could be expired medications. That could be pharmacy repackaged medications that don't have the appropriate information, like a return to stock bottle that's placed on the shelf that just says amlodipine 2.5 milligrams with no other identifying information. That could be product's not labeled correctly. There's so many different things. It's so much more than just what that says there.
I would answer that question, Dr. Richmond, by saying that the basic elements required to be in compliance with our rules as well as federal regulations and FDA guidelines are included in here. If you check all these boxes, you are in basic compliance.
And I would agree with Dr. Tankersley on that. Really, it's a minimum expectation.
Any other comments?
I mean, short of going reg by reg, line by line, can we feel confident that if we go back and re-inspect again, that she has found a par level, if you will, that puts her on solid footing, that we can feel confident that she's doing what's necessary to be a Class A pharmacy? I mean, if things just keep happening, but you go in and you find 10 things and then those get fixed, but you find 7 more, the job's not getting done. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So I would like to say that I would like to be optimistic and say that that would happen, but maybe I was a little overly optimistic when I began this job, thinking we set the standard and it continuously improves. And going back into some of these places, you know, maybe we find it this time, maybe we find something different the next time. You're exactly right.
I think there's a follow-up inspection at 12 months too, as part of the.
Yes.
And I'd kind of echo Dr. Jolly's concerns is that we told you it was coming. You know, you kind of knew and you've got this. I know you had a clean inspection the last time without any non-compliance. And so I understand that maybe there were some things that if you look back at that, you weren't thinking that you were out of compliance then, but there's been quite a bit of time that's elapsed or that's happened since then. So the concern is, you know, if this is what we found on kind of a 3-month follow-up right after we had a huge issue with the board, you know, there's a fair amount of time in there to kind of correct these things and they weren't done. But, you know, I think that's what Dr. Richmond's kind of getting at.
And I would say for Brandon and I, and if I don't speak of one voice, you let me know. At some point with this, our purpose has been a bit confusing for us because we don't know if we are doing this inspection as an education or if we are doing this inspection as an inspection. And if we do continual inspections where we continue to find deficiencies, we are in essence using inspections as an education. And I don't view my inspection as a consulting, you know, round when I go in. Of course, I'm going to educate on certain things. But at some point, if we continue repeated inspections only to learn the next rules that we weren't compliant with, we would like some direction there as to some guidance from the board.
I don't want to speak for the whole board, but me personally, I think we need a true inspection of the pharmacy of you know, moving forward. This is a inspection. This is not a educational deal. This is what our inspection is, and this is how we feel, and we're going to go with it. And if it's not a Class A pharmacy, then it's not a Class A pharmacy, and then we'd follow up, you know, at a normal interval at that point and going forward. I think we got to do that to get back on track and say, yep, we're comfortable that we've got a good PIC, we've got a good pharmacy, that the public's best interest is kind of taken care of here, and we can feel confident that things are going smoothly. And I don't think you can just continually do re-inspections and as an educational endeavor.
I agree. And I don't think we probably provided that guidance in the last, maybe in our minds, we were thinking go inspect and then let's do what we're doing today, which is bring it back to us. But I agree. I view it as a true inspection, but I also don't feel like I can put more work on busy inspectors and say, go back in 2 months or go back in a month. I mean,
To that point, we did conduct this one as if it were a normal inspection. This is how I would have I would have inspected any pharmacy.
I think the only difference is she was on notice that this was going to happen within 3 months of her hearing because that was part of the board order. So she probably should have seen them, knew that they were going to come in and do an inspection within the 3 months. Not normally be the case, I guess.
In recognizing the board's disappointment, it's loud and clear, and I hope that you're picking up from Dr. Barr that she recognizes that, accepts responsibility for all of that. I think that, and your concerns that have all been voiced are valid and they're loud and clear, and I hope that by engaging another set of eyes, someone else to come in that acknowledges it's doing the responsibility to assist her in meeting her responsibility to you guys. I hope that is something that carries some influence with y'all. The other thing that I would point out is prior to this, I believe that her inspection history is not only really good in 2022, I believe the inspections prior to that conducted by this board were likewise as beneficial or as positive as her 2022 inspection. I hope that we can demonstrate this is an anomaly. This is an outlier. It's certainly an outlier when compared to her prior inspections. And we hope she gets the opportunity, and we're seeking that opportunity to show you going forward that her inspections are going to improve and be in compliance. And we believe she's put the framework in place to make that occur.
When we address the prior issues, who was PSC? Who have you been PSC for since? Okay. So, I mean, hiring someone who is not a pharmacist, I mean, confirming that they are licensed, that would be a PSC duty. So we had a whole slew of things that happened that should have been PSC responsibility. And then heard, as your attorney has described, that you're trying to put forth a good faith effort, but that's what we heard last time when you were here. And now we have yet another bevy of PSC responsibilities that aren't being addressed. Are you a one-person operation, pharmacist operation now? There's nobody else that could be PSC.
So what is our next step?
For 12 months, there's another.
I guess the no later, it says no later than at 3 months and then at 12 months, I think is the way it's worded.
On the last page.
Yeah. Maybe at the top of the.
And no later
yeah,
than 3
there.
months.
Information period is 12 months.
So if you walked into a pharmacy that had clean inspections coming up to this point, what would you have done seeing this inspection report with that many deficiencies?
Would have definitely been concerned. I think for me, the one-time shipment or the shipment sent to a patient that's in another state as long as it's not a routine thing. I believe I've probably heard at some point that this person lives in Arizona, but they have Arkansas Medicaid, so I ship it there. I've heard that a time or two in places. That's not something that's going on here. That's probably an education point for me. Hey, you can really get in trouble shipping in other states. Let's not do this. If it's a one-time thing, couple-time thing, all right. But if it's something like that where you're skirting insurance regulations and things like that, that goes to a whole different level. The controlled substances, as I was telling Dr. Jolly, I mean, it's really hard to see those electronic signatures. But again, that corresponding responsibility exists to confirm that that is manually signed by the prescriber. And I can say one of the prescribers that's electronically signing is still doing it from when I was in practice over 3 years ago. I remember seeing those prescriptions in practice and every time having to call the office and say, this is not manually signed. I have to get a verbal authorization for this every single time. Didn't matter how many times we did it, every single month. We had to do that with this one prescriber. And there's multiple around the Little Rock area and actually around the state. You know, I think one of the things that bothers me the most really are the out of dates. That's very simple in my opinion. And something, honestly, a very commonly used medication being dated, having an expiration date of 2022, kind of bothered me.
Yes, the question, what I would do had this been an inspection, I would have failed the inspection. I would have come back. Generally, if they've had clean inspections, but I have this level of deficiency, at that point, it's most likely a stern non-disciplinary warning letter with a reinspection 90 days later. But with this one, the compounding specifically, if I can come in and catch that issue, and I know as much about compounding when I did this, that, I mean, you could probably trim Kevin's fingernail and I would know less, right? And I knew that you can't compound. If sugar's bad, your cake's bad. So that part and the fact that it went to patients, I may discuss that with Brenda and Ashley and decide whether or not a warning letter was effective enough or if we needed to have a hearing on it. Just the level of deficiency I would fail and then decide between a warning letter or a hearing.
And that's without the backdrop of the prior history.
For me, yes, sir. You can see it in my inspections. That's typically, that's how I process a failed inspection. And the out of dates were egregious. I know we think that that's a basic thing. I stopped at 20. I stopped counting at 20 and I was not halfway through inventory.
And to add to that, one of the things, a lot of people talking about the repackaged pharmacy products that are on the shelf, whether it's, you know, somebody, if not specifically Dr. Barr here at the medicine shop, but if somebody has a medication in a Parata or robotics like that, and they remove that NDC, oftentimes we find those products on the shelf without all the information that needs to be on there. We don't know when the expiration date is. The concern with that is how many times does that product get repackaged down the line to where it's, we don't have a date, we don't have a lot number, we have nothing to really trace that.
I believe what Brandon is referring to is insurance companies make us return to stock after 2 weeks if they don't pick it up. So when we return to stock, I do not take that bottle and pour it back in the stock bottle because that is just asking for trouble. We tear the patient's name off. Well, when we tore the patient's name off, we tore the date off of the bottle as well. But that's usually the first drug that gets used again. But now I'm tearing off just the name and not the date. So then they were telling me that the date that it was dispensed, I have a year to dispense that product out of that bottle. If I'm correct, is that correct?
Unless it was going to
Brandon?
be sooner.
Unless,
which,
right.
depending on the software system you're using. And thank you for pointing out the not pouring back, because it's equally alarming to me if I walk into a pharmacy and don't see any return to stocks on the shelf. That tells me there's probably a pour back policy and who's doing it. I actually saw one on a door here recently on an inspection about pour back policy. Not a good thing to see.
No, we don't pour back.
Almost start on, all right, this time, Dr. Boone, what are your thoughts?
I would say at a minimum, it needs to be flagged for reinspection and the decision on Class A pharmacy, it wasn't made at the time of the inspection. I don't know how that works at this point, but more than 3 non-compliant deficiencies, so.
Dr. Jolly?
I agree. I don't, hate to put the reinspection. Are you saying 90 days or do you?
I think within 90 days, I wouldn't let it go out to 12, when you're talking
Yeah.
I think
however many
that's-
more months,
Yeah.
9, 10 months at this point. And if everything has been fixed, then it shouldn't be an issue.
I
We
do.
don't want to become as an every 3 month consulting service.
No,
I think we have to be cautious that we don't go back and retry the issue that we've already heard. But then at the same time, you can't ignore that as the backdrop on which this is continuing to occur.
well, the probationary period, the basis of that is really failure as a PIC to verify that you had a licensed pharmacist working in your pharmacy. So that, unless I'm missing something, that's the reason why Dr. Barr was placed on probation as a PIC. There's other PIC responsibilities, and really the inspection form in a lot of ways may not be comprehensive for all PIC duties, but it is, to me, a fairly comprehensive review of, as a PIC, what you need to make sure that you're doing as a bare minimum to run a Class A pharmacy. So to me, if we go back in 3 months, then the probationary period, the probationary status is at risk if we don't get a, however we would define as a acceptable inspection. Anything?
What position were you?
Yes, ma'am, and I am very sorry. I am so disappointed to be here and taking up y'all's time and over something that I needed to have had done.
How would we define a clean inspection? Would we say if there was one, is it really contingent on whether we classified it? Is it what's in there, pharmacies with no more than 3?
Well, that's Class A. To be Class A status, you cannot have more than 3 deficiencies. If I was going to say a clean inspection, and they would have to tell us, I mean, how many inspections do you have where there's not anything marked non-compliant?
Probably 5% of my inspections, if even that, less than 5% have no deficiencies to report. But there still may be discussions at that time, such as products that shouldn't be open whenever you dispense them, that should be in the original container, things like that. There's never anything that goes on without some discussion.
And
Say 5 to 10% would have no deficiency.
And there's a whole lot that I've seen just by going back and glancing at files over the years that'll have one deficiency, and it's generally something like the CMEA certificate was out of date, and within a day or two, they can send a corrective action to show that that was taken care of. And I've seen that on stores that they say, well, we don't even sell any OTC Sudafed, we only sell on prescription. And then you point out, well, DEA says you still have to have that because you have the OTC product. Or they can't lay hands on C2 inventory. Or those still pretty consistent, like the most common things you would see as little piddly things.
Expired medications, repackaged medications, things like that. For sure. Improper sales of controlled substances.
Yeah, where they can't
From
locate an
one
invoice.
DEA registrant to another DEA registrant.
Can't loan C2s.
Can't load any controlled substances.
Gotta have an invoice on others, but
Right.
C2's gotta have 222.
I would say too that most every line item on this inspection can be traced through a rule that we're all apprised of knowing. And I hold them all fairly equal in my head because they each have an applicable source that is the source document for how we run a pharmacy. So as far as, I mean, the CMEA and things like that, that someone can correct on site while I'm there, right? But if it's the second time that we've corrected it when I'm on site, it's not so great. Because at that point, we're taking advantage of that leniency of the things that may have been considered piddly in the past. They're all on here for a reason.
And to me, that's CMEA honestly is not a piddly thing because you've been inappropriately selling Sudafed for X period of time, if that's the case. So to me, even if you resolve it at that point, you were still deficient for a period of time. And not that Dr. Barr was not there, just to be clear, just as an example.
And I'm sorry, I meant Italy, like they couldn't lay hands on the C2
Yeah,
inventory,
sure.
but they actually had it.
Right.
For their controlled substance inventory.
Because people get flustered when we walk in the door. So
Yeah.
sure.
But then you tell them, if you keep it all in a folder, it's right where you know where it is.
I guess what I'm trying to determine, and maybe it's not possible, or maybe it's not it, but I'm trying to figure out if 3 months down the road, we're back in here. What is going to be the decision point on whether the inspection was acceptable or not? So that, because we didn't provide that last time, maybe we should have been a little bit more clear.
I may have a different opinion just listening to this is I think you're trying to ask, how do we know in 3 months down the road, it's whether or not the inspection is good and you're trying to do it proactively. I think what you're actually thinking about is why don't we, if you want us to do another inspection in 3 months, then have her come back and report to the board and you all discuss it. Because we have no idea what it's going to say. She has no idea what it's going to say. Hey, if it's perfect, that's an easy discussion. It's an easy discussion of, well, what else is going on your monthly reviews? How's it been going since you've got someone come in every other month kind of consulting for you? And the question is, at this point, are you nervous enough that you go, no matter what happens, next informal we have, we want to see you back? Like put 30 minutes, not like an hour and a half on the agenda and let's have another discussion. Some states do, well, as I understand it, and I have not seen it firsthand, they basically do supervised probation. And it's something that I'm hoping we hear more about at some future meeting that we'll all be together in. Or I may be able to listen to it and we have all the execs together, which is not a board meeting. But I think they actually have, when they lay out when they lay out probation, it's not just, hey, you've got to report it to us. Like they actually are supervising it. And if it's extra inspections, they assign extra inspections with cost associated. If it's reports, then they have, specific expectations for the reports, and the board, I think, reviews it. It's a more intense process than what we've done a lot of times with probation.
Would you, okay, that's fine. Would you be okay with when we do the inspection, though, we do make a determination on whether it's a Class A pharmacy?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I think if that box is checked, it's at least one step.
Yeah, it won't make a difference on interns, but it would make a difference on the inspection. But I mean, things like the lab use chemicals and things like that, we've been trying to educate on that for a while, but we still find pockets.
I guess the motion would be to flag this one for inspection in approximately 90 days. For Dr. Barr to be scheduled at the next informal following that inspection.
Yeah.
Dr. Gallagher, for clarification on that, are you saying 90 days from the date of this inspection? Or 90 days from,
today.
90 days from today.
I think you're having to say within.
Yeah, it says
But-
approximately.
yeah.
Within approximately 90 days of today.
Okay.
Because you would have probably on any given inspection, you might have very well, would you have flagged it? And put class A or not, I think would be the difference.
Right, yes.
'Cause I've seen you guys flag them or say we need to go back.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
Five
this,
ones that were not passing inspections for.
And again, given the previous meeting, it was one of those things really, we wanted more guidance on where do we go with this? That's why we brought it back and wanted further guidance on what we were expected to do.
yeah, and I think it's a true inspection. I think yeah.
Our goal was to create a baseline to present.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Oh, let me state that the motion was made by Dr. Jolly, second by Dr. Boone. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. The motion passes. Okay. This is extremely, extremely, extremely rare. No, we often sure. This will be next time will be the third time that you've been here.
Yes, ma'am.
Please do things to get it right.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you all. May we be excused.
If you want to take a quick break, I'm seeing we might be able to move our 3 o'clock up a little bit. To see what happened. We have some people that might try to tune in. I'll give them a heads up as well.
Ask you a small question. Am I doing, like, sending the reports to you? That's fine. I'm gonna start sending them with the, oh, sorry, with the return to me. That way I know you got it. Okay, that way I won't reach out and be bothering you. I don't want to bother you.
No access to anything.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And I had asked Brandon a couple of questions and then I started worrying that something had happened to Brandon because he didn't answer me. So it's okay. Well,
So let me ask that, and I don't want to make it any harder, anybody or you. Y'all need, is that because y'all prefer to do that? So that's fine.
Anytime someone in this. Only go through council because we don't. They would invite her, but we don't need to tell her something without you knowing and you get. And I'm representing her, I'm the vote. So I think if she copies you on everything. Copy you back, that covers most of it.
because
That way you're in the loop.
quite honestly, I was unaware I still had an attorney. I thought we were just friends.
Yeah.
So that's why when he called to tell me about the notice of hearing, I was like, wait a minute, what? I thought we were gonna have a barbecue.
We'll keep everybody in the loop.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Thank you
thank you.
again.
No, mouth breathers, lip breathers.
Need to see this?
I got it pulled up right here.
Miss Embry, Dr. Griffin, Dr. Scribner, can you guys hear us?
I can hear you.
All right. See if Dr. Griffin and Dr. Scribner can hear us, and we'll check their mics so we can hear back from them.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
Dr. Griffin, I think you're on mute.
And good. Can you hear me
There we
now?
go.
Okay.
There we go. I can. We had to put our entire Zoom on extreme lockdown after an incident earlier today, which was most exciting for all of us. I've got a couple of copies, just so we've got a couple paper copies of this here. If you guys are good, I'll try to go ahead and kick this off. I'll tell who all we've got with us today, and then I'll probably shut off my camera so I don't get the infinite versions of John Kirtley in the background. That's a terror for some folks. Here on the Board of Pharmacy side, I'm here. We've got some other staff members that are in and out. We'll try to make sure to turn on our microphones so you guys can hear us whenever we're talking. But to my left, your right, we have Dr. Clint Boone, who's one of our pharmacy board members, Dr. Lenora Newsom. Dr. Newsom serves as our chair of our informal committee, which has been meeting the last couple of days, Dr. Brian Jolly and Dr. Rodney Richmond. So we actually have all four of them were able to stick around for this since we got done a little early. Dr. Brenda McCready, who's our assistant director, is joining me right here as well. Just as a quick overview, I had told Ms. Embry my plan was to go through a couple things to give a quick overview, sent out documentation so you guys could see Act 575 of 2023. With that, I don't know what just happened there. Our role for the medical board and the pharmacy board, and really for all of you as members, and we're meeting by committee as a step one, is to establish which medications you would be willing to grant an exemption to or an exception to so that they can continue to have a prior authorization criteria attached to them after January 1st of 2025. After having met with medical board and pharmacy board, we set up some criteria as far as what the application process would be for people to actually apply for this exception or exemption criteria. So far, we have had 3 submissions. All 3 I had sent back to ask for additional documentation. 2 of those have been returned in time for this meeting. We've got 1 that I think has maybe just come back, but it's too late to get it in on this group. I haven't been able to look at it again to see if they were able to give us the additional information that we need. In this process, we asked them to establish the actual estimated cost. We know that there may not be an exact cost. They may not have had any claims on these drugs in recent history, or those costs could change. So the prices that you see throughout these lists are general approximations of what they think they would cost for a claim at this time. We've got them classified per kind of our policy, that there are ones that are over $5,000 was kind of the number that everybody had come up with that seemed like a reasonable potential start point of over a specific cost. A PA might just seem reasonable because if you're talking $5,000 per episode of care or per month, you are also talking about potentially $60,000 a year on many of those treatments or greater. And you can see that some of those costs are much, much greater than that. For the drugs that are under $5,000, they've had to designate if it's either a kind of a classification 2A or 2B. 2A, we had identified, they have identified issues identified with inappropriate use and or off-label indications that are different than what the plan desires to pay for. The prime example I would give of that, if it's a anti-diabetic agent with an indication for use in diabetes and someone's using it for lifestyle modification or weight loss. And then 2B, there are specific medications with specific safety concerns that people want to have prior authorizations with. With this, whatever decisions the committee comes up with today, the spreadsheet itself, and we have it on little iPad devices. I've got it on a laptop if I need to do anything else. And I'm trying to get some paper copies here, but I went ahead and gave line items so that if you have a specific drug that you want to pull out and talk about or have concern with, if you can tell us what line it is, we can all find it collectively pretty quickly. I think that's the fastest way for us to get through what is a massive amount of lines of data with over 800. With that, if it is okay, does anybody have any questions about how we'll proceed with this?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So on this spreadsheet, these are the ones that they have provided all the information you have requested, or does this include the ones you've sent back?
These two lists that I have combined into one, you can see the two entities that have actually requested this.
Mhm.
These are ones that I had sent back and they sent the extra information and then I put in the group.
Okay,
The other one was a similar request, like they either did not have details as to what the specific request was on section 2. Like I said, if you just say 2A or 2B, my expectation is that these committee members, both our physicians and our pharmacists, are going to say, they didn't give us any details, just deny it, which pushes them, any drugs that you deny today, that we will take these reports to the full boards, and if the full boards adopt the committee report, it would put them in a position to then they could go through the appeals process, which is with the Arkansas Insurance Department. We're done. Like whatever decisions you make, we're going to be done with it, from the Board of Pharmacy, the Board of Medicine.
so it will
These are complete.
okay, and these, whatever decisions the committee makes today, it will go to the 2 full boards. They will give their final agreement, then they can do it. Okay.
And I anticipate that the third group that was going to submit, once it is seen whatever the committee decision is on this, even before the boards have approved it or denied it or made changes to it, I imagine that might also help trim down the list. For instance, if one of you makes the motion that all the drugs over $5,000 you've looked at and you're okay with this list of drugs over $5,000 having a PA, well, that would basically mean that all those drugs would not need an additional approval purely based on that policy based by the committee decision.
Okay.
That helpful? I hope. Thank you. All right, so with that, you've seen kind of the Act 575 criteria. We did work with them so they could send them in as spreadsheets rather than individual submissions. I imagine we might have some later that are just some individual one-off submissions, which could go through the portal. But so far, I've worked with all these companies on bulk submissions. So you have the list of drugs. We've got the over 5,000, under 5,000. I've got up to line 422 with all those drugs that are named as over 5,000. And I'm just going to say, does anybody have anything in that first half of the list in there that they want to pull out and discuss? Have questions on anything else?
So basically, anything above that line is still going to need a PA. Is that what, am I reading that right?
If the committee endorses or adopts that by policy, they believe that all of those drugs should be eligible for the exception to have a PA, we could proceed there. If there are any drugs that you want to pull out, or that or even if you say, you know what, I don't think that's good enough, we could ask for more details going forward. It's really up to you guys how you want to handle it. That's just how we had associated that was a different bright line than just saying off-label use or potential medical risk.
Yeah, and most of these are oncology drugs, but am I right?
A lot of them are. When we got the list, I couldn't believe how many gene therapies, CAR T therapies, oncolytics. It's a lot of it.
I mean, I never prescribe any of those is the thing to say.
Yeah. Well, when you have your entire first few drugs, the first 9 that are all well over $1 million, and then you have a whole lot more that are well over 100,000. I mean, I would see these drugs when I was on a health insurance board because they were the bank busters that we had. I mean, one-time treatment, that's only one time, but it's $3 million. Like that's a lot of money.
That is shocking.
Yeah. It makes the $5,000 seem like not much money all of a sudden.
Man.
So I'm punting to both my pharmacist here and to my physicians on screen with us. What do you guys, anything you want to pull out, anything you want to discuss, or what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, I don't have anything I'd pull out. I just, I just, in all fairness, I just don't prescribe those medicines. Those are all oncology. So there's not an oncologist. See what they say about it, but.
Same here. I don't prescribe any of those either. I would like to know what oncologists or two would say about the necessity of these drugs, but I don't see any reason to pull anything out. I'm with Dr. Scribner.
I do see like Humira, Enbrel,
Yep.
Stelara. I have a few patients on those. I mean, like take Humira, for instance. Was that $6,900 a month? That's crazy.
And I'll tell you, I was surprised at how high the prices had gotten on some of those, because my recollection was, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, I think Humira was $6,000 for a 3-month supply, not a 1-month supply. And then there's some that it's starting doses versus ongoing doses. But those have gone way up.
So if we take, let's say, like you said, Lee, we take that off the list. That means it doesn't require a PA then.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Like if you said, looking through here are 6 medications over $5,000 that I just don't believe should have to have a PA because of how commonly they're used or how direct the use or the appropriate use of them is, then tell us what lines you want to pull out before anyone makes a motion. We'll pull them out.
Okay.
I'm curious what the pharmacists think on the board, because you guys deal with these daily where my physicians may not necessarily prescribe them. Did they have any concerns about the list?
So far, the ones above 5,000, I am not seeing any that I wouldn't expect to have a prior authorization.
I would echo that, and I would say a large percentage of those are going to be prior authorizations for an infusion center setting. They're not going to be on a prescription benefit.
Oh, that's true.
I know that can still impact a physician's workflow. But these aren't drugs that they're going to be getting from their pharmacy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dr. Jolly, of course, his background is he's the chief pharmacist at UAMS. Most or many of these oncolytic agents, they're all infused or given in medical settings. So even though it might be medical billing, not pharmacy billing, the PA criteria still applies through the act. So that's probably why we're being asked to review those.
The only other thing I was going to add is I feel like in looking at the indications like oncology, multiple sclerosis, hemophilia, it makes sense to me why those would all need a PA, because they're disease states that probably need to go through that process.
We would have some with hemophilia where, we went through a time period here where if we had 60 people reciprocating, 10 of them were associated with hemophilia pharmacies trying to ship factor. And there were a lot of insurance concerns that oftentimes if you have one hemophiliac in a group, you've got others that they might be sharing their meds with that aren't actually on the plan. Same thing like HAE, which is a very expensive treatment. But anything you guys want to pull off of being able to have a PA?
And when this goes in front of the full board, will they be able to make a suggestion too?
Yes. So, and I'll tell you, I have kind of modeled this after my background experience in a health plan. When I was on that, I was on the drug utilization committee as well as on the board. I actually served the subcommittee and the board. And there were times when we would have a subcommittee that would say, here's our report and our suggestion. And because we had, physician interest or pharmacist interest on the board, sometimes they go, hey, I want to discuss this drug before we make this decision. So this is what the committees would endorse to the boards, but the boards have final decision on this. And the way that I've looked at it is you have to make the decision to allow a PA to occur. So I would even say if the pharmacy board says, hey, this drug can have a PA, and then at the medical board meeting, if it's after or vice versa, someone says, actually, I don't think this one should, and the board moves that, then there's not agreement. So there's not approval to have a PA. Like the exception is only granted if both groups agree on it, is the way I
Okay.
have approached this. Because if both groups don't agree, then it doesn't meet the criteria.
I mean, I think it's a great start. This isn't the final coup d'etat here, so, just to get it in front of the full boards and everybody can review it, but it's a good start, I think.
The only one I saw on there that's above 5,000 that's not making sense to me was Meperidine.
Yeah. that's
Well,
the
and
one I remember.
so-
I think that's calculated incorrectly.
So Dr. Jolly and Dr. Boone have both identified there's this meperidine opioid analgesic at $5,122. Now, given it's meperidine, so we all know it's an opioid, which has abuse potential and oversight, but it's not listed as like some strange brand name or some specific route of administration or anything else, but we almost think that might have been a typo on the price because
What numbers?
it's a
Yeah.
417.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it has that price, but then it has the specific criteria listed like it's actually a less expensive drug.
Yeah, it's got to be a mistake of some kind.
Something's happened in either delivery to us or translation of the list.
Mm-hmm.
But I think meperidine is further down the list with all the other opiates, even under the cost of 5,000, because most of the opioid drugs are on here on the list under 5,000.
I wonder if Aetna entered it on one line and Blue Cross Blue Shield entered it on another, because I saw it twice as well.
That absolutely could be. We do have several drugs that are listed twice with different prices.
Yeah. Yep. Like I said before, I think it's a good starting spot. Do you need a motion or what?
If somebody wants to make a motion on above 5,000, that'll kick that list to the board. That the committee would say, these are drugs that the committee thinks could have PAs. And then it puts it on the board if they want to select and pull any specific drugs back off the list.
Okay. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, got Dr. Scribner, Dr. Griffin. I guess, Dr. Newsom, we usually have you chair this. Would you like to call for a vote so we can get all the votes on that?
Yes,
I'll make it.
okay.
Well, we've got a motion and a second of the committee.
Oh,
but
we're not doing it separately.
I wouldn't.
We're all one.
Yeah,
Good.
I do a
Okay.
committee as a whole,
All
and
right.
then if you'll take a vote, we'll get everybody to vote.
Alrighty. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion passes.
Now for the fun work. Because I have no idea, even guessing what you guys want to do with this giant list of drugs below $5,000. Because there's some that I think we would all look and go, why would that have a PA on it? Like it's almost more interesting because it starts under 5,000 at line 423. That's line 423 of 800 and some odd lines. It's almost more interesting to me if you start at the bottom and start moving up.
Mhm.
Because it's mainly, analgesics for the most part from the bottom, but $3.54. Under $10 for a couple of pages for me. Tramadol, Ultram, methadone. And we got estradiol.
Hmm.
But like the estradiol, I mean, a lot of these drugs are Beers criteria. I mean, Beers criteria to me is not a hard halt on the drug. It's used in caution or not recommended for those age groups. Bouncing this off a couple other people, I kind of heard like, why would by itself Beers criteria be a standalone reason to have a PA potentially? I mean, if you're the prescriber and it's not appropriate for your patient, you shouldn't be prescribing it. But if they say Beers criteria, you have a reason in your mind probably why you're still going to prescribe it, weighing the risk benefits.
They just say not covered.
Yeah, they could say not covered.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a good point Dr. Boone is making. This is only for drugs that are covered. And we had decision-making on our insurance board where we had drugs we did not cover, and then we had drugs that we would cover with a PA. If it's not covered at all, the PA is a moot point. It's if the patient gets it prescribed and they still want it, it's an out-of-pocket pay. They can probably claim it on if they have a cafeteria plan or flexible spending account or something like that.
What about step therapy? If they want to use step therapy,
That's
do they
PA.
have to, that's a PA.
Yeah. If you're doing step therapy, I identified that if you've got step therapy, you have a PA to make sure that the other steps have been met before you get this paid for. I think you'd probably agree with that, wouldn't you? I'm asking one of our audience members. Okay. Well,
Aetna or Blue Cross.
yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, this makes it more onerous, it's, if you have to do a PA on all these, my gosh.
I know. So this is where the list gets fun for you guys of you could pick drugs that you agree with the PA. You can pick drugs that you want to pull from the list, but it's a lot of data.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
can I throw this out there?
Sure.
I've looked at the ones between 2,500 and 5,000.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have an issue with any of those based on, I'm kind of looking at the therapeutic class too.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at like what condition are they treating? And so I think about a multiple sclerosis agent, Hep C, monoclonal antibodies, immune globulins, colony stimulating factors. I don't necessarily have an issue with all the ones above 2,500, except for I saw levodopa on there.
What?
For Parkinson.
Well, it's that specific brand on 469.
Oh, is that I'm a hospital guy, so I don't know these oil.
Inbrija.
Okay.
Isn't that's the inhaler? That's the dry.
I think so.
inhaler. There's also an intestinal gel.
It's in Inbrija.
I'm looking
Okay,
it
so
up.
it's a special dosage form. Okay.
Intended to deliver. Rapidly, kind of like the effective age on working.
And what about Nordesic? Is that one really $3,000 a month? Or Phenadrine with aspirin and caffeine? Sounds like an old drug. Yeah.
Yeah, Inbrija is the inhalation powder capsules.
But anyway, I know it's a long, long list. I just wanted to just kind of throw that out there.
So, and just to clarify, that would take you down to line
496.
495 and above. So docs, if you guys want to look at what Dr. Jolly's talking about is from line 495 up to line or 423 to 495. It gets another chunk. That's the range from 2,500 to 5,000. If you want to look through that, see if there's anything else you want to ask a question on.
Oh, these all look like they said, these are MS drugs, immunoglobulin stuff. I don't prescribe a lot of this stuff either.
Yeah. I know some of the like colony stimulating factors. I know it's a very specific, grastums, but Those things are,
Well, and honestly, they're gonna be getting the PA for the
Expensive.
chemo at the same time.
Yeah, to go with it. People don't need to use it just for an immune boost or a
Right.
energy boost. That's the concern of those costs.
For example, if you have all the MS drugs, I mean, all of them pretty much, I mean, glutarimer or, you know, interferons, they're all gonna be relatively expensive. Now you subject an MS patient to dealing with a authorization.
Yeah.
I think most of the ones on this list are infusable.
With hormones.
That gets us from, by my count, after everybody's had a chance to look those over, that does take the list from 830 down to 335,
Yeah.
336.
That a motion to take it down to line 495.
Well, I want to give everybody a chance to look at it. I don't know.
So when it specifically says I know there's some, and I may be getting further down the list here. If it specifically says branded on a drug, that means they would have to list the generic separately if they
Separately.
wanted to.
Yes, it's by, so I gave it to where it could have the brand name if they're asking for the branded products, or just the generic name and they're saying, well, it's on the generic, like,
Thinking like
line 486. Maybe
I
back
ripped
one from
off.
you.
Yeah.
Like 486 is infliximab monoclonal antibodies, and it's basically saying the generic infliximab. And then there's some others where you'll see it's actually a biosimilar or a interchangeable biologic. It actually gives like the four digit or letter designation for that specific product. So we have these as specified to product, not to all products under that generic unless it's listed as a generic. Line 492, you know. Teriparatide. I can even say teriparatide today. There's a progesterone that costs $2,600.
That's for.
Prices are
fertility.
ridiculous.
Yeah. I didn't realize it costs that much now.
So I guess I'll go ahead and make that motion if everybody's had a chance to look it over on the 2,500 and up.
But
I'd second that.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second on that, and that would be line 495, which would get you the drugs listed over cost of $2,500 per month or episode of care.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any nays? The motion passes.
All right, I'm looking down past that now.
First one I came up with was Trulicity.
What line
That
is
you
it on?
pulled.
Yeah, 575.
I mean, like the analgesics, especially these very expensive ones, I can absolutely understand. Ventura, Actique.
Well, when I start thinking about step therapy, if that's included, then, you could understand how you would want somebody to go
Yeah,
straight to that without a history of it.
well, it could kill it.
Yeah.
Lidoderm.
Well, that's branded. That was my question. So unless there is a generic down here further, which is cheaper now,
Very.
then I could understand why they don't want to cover the brand name.
Yeah.
but I hadn't made it far enough down to generic.
I mean, you've got the generic, which is fraction of that cost.
Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, unless we go down further in here and it's
Yeah.
listed, then I would leave that one there. For some reason, our brand name.
Branded tobramycin
Toby.
or just Toby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toby.
Different EPOs. Tadalafil that expensive?
Well, I think
there's
their
the
concern is
off-label
they-
use.
They don't want to cover for ED.
I know. But is it $1,500, $1,400 a month? I didn't think it was near
Is that
that.
brand or is that?
No, it's just generic.
Oh, no, it's not.
But they're still gonna want a PA on it since somebody's not getting it.
I know, for lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knew Wegovy was coming, all the ones with
Mm-hmm.
indication for only diabetes.
Yeah, I had Trulicity, Multac, dog encyclovir, Santal.
570, something.
Starts at 579 and that list goes through 610 and I'm still working my way down.
So Donna, I'm sorry.
You're-
I got another proposal to get 60 off of our plate.
Okay, down to what number?
Well, they're scattered.
Okay,
So I did it by therapeutic class and I wanted to throw this out to the group. So anti-neoplastic agents. So those are going to be used in cancer. Autoimmune agents. The botulinum toxins, the Botoxes and the son of Botox, the Dysport and the Xeomin. Colony stimulating factors, which are again going to go along with the chemo regimen, all injectable. the cytoprotective agents like the leucovorins, and that's going to be for toxicity due to chemo. Again, an infusion. The erythropoietins, the growth factors, the hormonal anti-neoplastics, hypothalamic hormones, kinase inhibitors. There's only one, but it's a cancer drug.
I saw that.
And there's a ton of monoclonal antibodies, and and then the ones for pulmonary artery hypertension, and then the small molecule inhibitors, which are all anti-neoplastic agents as well. Now, one of them is $39.22, and then that one has gotten really cheap. But just wanted to throw out: do we want to adopt maybe some of those that are heavily skewed toward oncology, administered in an infusion setting? Do we want to perhaps consider those as requiring PA?
Let's follow all that because I got about 80% of it. He was saying the anti-neoplastics, since they're already going to be part of oncology care along with several of the other drugs, I would group in with that colony stimulating factors, cytoprotective, the EPOs, let's say hormonal.
The hormonal anti-neoplastics.
Anti-neoplastic.
Like breast cancer, some of the breast cancer drugs.
And he's just going by the classification on those. The kinase, that one drug, monoclonal antibodies, pulmonary hypertension, which will catch like the tadalafil stuff, right?
Yes.
And then the autoimmune factors, which is going to get, let's see where you even.
That was the Humira. That's a Humira. And if we want to talk about that one.
Yeah, that one's.
Let me take that one off because I know we want to talk about Humira more. It was one specific biosimilar. Okay. That showed up there.
That had a drop in.
That had a different therapeutic class. So exclude that one, mark that one off. I didn't mean to
Okay,
include that.
I'll mark the autoimmune and then the human growth hormones. The growth factors. I know we've had a lot of shortage of supply of those in various strengths, which has caused, some call for PAs because of supply issues. If there's inappropriate use, they don't have them for the people who have to have it. Opioids.
No, I think that list is way too long. I think physicians should be able to determine prescribing an opioid without a PA. I don't even know why some of those are on there.
I understand it's, you want as many safeguards in place with opioids, but every time somebody goes to the dentist or has a broken foot or something, they got to get a PA. That's not going to work with the acuity of need.
Here's what I'm trying to do in general. Like in a hospital infusion setting, you're going to have to get prior authorization just to treat them for their disease.
Yeah.
So a PA to administer chemo just generically. And then you're by virtue of that, you're going to have to get a PA for your regimen.
Yeah.
So I'm trying
which covers all of it. So
exactly.
Well, and if you start saying you got to get PA for these two, or you do something else, you don't want to push a patient to the less selective therapy just because it's easier.
Right. And a lot of hospitals have dedicated staff that are working those PAs, and it doesn't necessarily impact the prescriber. So I'm just trying to grab that. I'm looking at that as low hanging fruit where, yeah, I can agree that understand what their reasoning is behind those.
So I have a question. So what would happen if we just said everything under 2,000, take it off the list? What if we just drew a line? So that's it.
That would move us down to line 520. Because I mean, in looking at that, you are, and Dr. Scribner, I imagine you're looking at the same thing I am. You're talking about similar drugs to what is above 5,000, just some of them are less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing you do need to be careful about is there are several branded products in here that also have a generic, and you don't necessarily want to say you have to
Use the generic.
because there may be some instance where somebody needs a brand name, but it does need a PA to go through to that. You know,
They don't have to have a PA. They could have a PA. So an insurance plan, if they say, well, the generic cannot have a PA based on price, but the brand name could have a PA. Well, if they'd prefer to have the brand name, they could say, well, we're not going to put a PA on the brand name either because of rebate or whatever else. So it's not that it will have, it's just it's eligible to have.
but what we're saying, if we take it off this list, they can't have a PA for it.
They cannot have a
And if they
PA.
choose to cover it, it could go through every
Yep.
single claim.
Yep. But I think for Dr. Scribner, we're eating the elephant bites at a time as we move down this list.
Yeah.
I think the smaller the list is that we start pulling out classifications, the easier that is to manage also. Because a lot of what you just named, Dr. Jolly, is going to be above that line 520. I think it's more than 60.
So Dr. Scrooge's proposal gets us down to like 310.
Yeah.
And then,
And so if you go down to 520, just looking past it, 521 Opzelura for dermatology, atopic dermatitis, non-covered indication for vitiglio, non-first line treatment, even of atopic dermatitis. They're basically saying they don't want to pay for it if they haven't tried other stuff for atopic dermatitis, is the way I take that. Next is Viocase, pancreatic enzymes, not covered for off-label use. Next, IBS drug, hepatic safety concerns with excessive alcohol use. Loda. There's your kinase inhibitor, Dr. Jolly.
yeah, there'd be quite a few, only stimulating factors on that one too.
Yeah, that cuts out a whole bunch of that.
So of that 310 therapeutic classes that I mentioned earlier, with the exception of the Humira one, another 50 drugs.
There's that specific gabapentin on 541, the once daily.
Solgovi on there too.
Yeah, it's on 543. I know that there's a lot of concern about inappropriate use.
I think that needs to remain.
Remain a PA drug.
Yeah.
Like, two of them on here.
Yep.
Saxenda, I've never heard of that.
That's
one.
another one that needs to be.
547 myoblock. Is it one of your botulinums? Anybody even use Dizoxin anymore? Line 554. I only ever had one person on it. Line 554, Dizoxin is methamphetamine. It's
Nope, never prescribed it.
I mean, I only had one patient on it ever. And if you didn't have it, like, I don't think anybody else, do you guys even carry that, Clint? Yeah, most pharmacies don't even have it. But it's, for ADHD, that's a high price for methamphetamine.
I wouldn't know. How do you know?
Well, I meant in comparison to other prescription drugs.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's pretty costly compared to the street side of that as well.
Most may be driven up just because of lack of availability.
No, I think that's it. I think on that one, the cost just went up because the demand is low and the availability is very low.
Oh, there's Monjero and Trulicity as well.
They're in the
They're in the diabetic category.
900s. Hadn't gotten down to them yet. Yeah, there's your, I just found Monjaro.
So they're wanting PAs just because of the propensity to want to use them off label, I guess.
Yeah, that's what most of these read. Some
Yeah.
of them, I mean, I'm just going through the list because, you know, a lot of this is stuff that I've heard of that I never had to deal with. But some of it is step through therapy because they want you to try, you know, triptans for migraines before you go to an injectable,
Hmm.
you know, preventive agent. Your Monjaro, Marinol. And then there's some, you know, if you look at like line 564, 565, they're saying their FDA approval is only for 24 months maximum. There's several drugs in there for that. More botulinums.
What about phentermine? Pyramate.
What line is that?
Oh,
That's a combo.
what line you on?
Well, I've resorted, so that's not gonna help.
Well, it'll be on the far left.
Yeah. Well, a number over here.
I've still resorted, but I'll tell you my line is line 595,
What's the price?
188.94.
That's way down then. Qsimia.
That's a brand name.
I can't believe can't believe. I'm surprised anybody's paying for it. I mean, in Arkansas, you can only prescribe it for 3 months at a time. And based on what Dr. Scribner and Dr. Jolly have thrown out by class, if you go down price of 2,500 and then you start looking at the class designations that Dr. Jolly threw out as a suggestion, I mean, you are pretty much, other than a few things, getting down to, is it $1,700, $1,500, $1,300? As I go through these, all these in like, we get to the tadalafil at line 540, that's pulmonary arterial hypertension. There's that once a day gabapentin, which I mean, I can understand not wanting to pay for once daily gabapentin instead of someone taking it twice a day for a fraction of that cost. Growth factor, anti-obesity, Wegovy, anti-neoplastic. Get all the way down to some movement disorders before you probably ask a question.
Yeah, 599, I think was. Where I got to, I don't know. Little tag or something.
John, can I throw these out as a motion?
Yeah.
To just get everybody to chew on it for a second. So there's one alkylating agent that's for chemo. I've got those anti-diabetic agents on there, the Mongeros and the Trulistis and the Ozempics of the world. I've got dronabinol on there because it's for post-op nausea vomiting. I mean, if they want a PA for it, that's fine, but nobody's ever going to have to do a PA for it. Because post-op patient, you're not going to even get paid for those drugs.
Yeah.
So I got it on there just to, a couple, again, anti-metabolites. I think those are for prostate cancer. I mean, I don't have an issue with those requiring a PA. The aforementioned anti-neoplastic agents, the botulinum toxins, the colony stimulating factors, cytoprotective agents, or EPOs, the growth factors, the breast cancer and the breast cancer anti-neoplastics like the hormonals, that kinase inhibitor, monoclonal antibodies, the drugs for PAH. There's a drug on there for sickle cell disease that's actually pretty expensive for a one-time dose. That's an infusion again. And then those small molecule inhibitors that are given with chemo. I guess my motion would be to, as classes, go ahead and allow those to get a PA. That's, let's see how many that is. 68 drugs on the list.
So what he's talking about, and I'm looking in the therapeutic categories, if it is in the one alkylating agent, the anti-diabetics, which would be the Wegovy's, Mounjaros, and I know there's another one on there I'm not seeing. Dronabinol, the anti-metabolites. All right.
Yes.
Anti-neoplastic agents.
It's actually two separate categories. One's anti-neoplastic, anti-metabolite agents,
Okay.
and then anti-neoplastic plant alkaloid.
Okay, the alcohol, okay. Colony stimulating factors. The botulinum toxins, there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 of those. The EPOs, so as a whole, which all those are $1,000 more, I think.
They're actually
Some of them are a little bit less.
like 500.
Okay.
They've gotten going down.
Growth factors, hormonal anti-neoplastics, PAH, pulmonary. There's a sickle cell drug. Do you know what?
Yeah, it actually just came on the market not within the last year. It's called Adacvio.
Okay.
It's a monoclonal antibody.
And then I had what, chemo small molecule inhibitors?
Yeah, that's the Velcade.
Okay.
And the generics of it that they give with the chemo.
Questions about that, anybody? I'm gonna have to do some list manipulation if y'all make a motion on this to determine where all those are.
I'm gonna email you. I'm highlighting.
Good. Dr. Jolly's highlighting it on his list so he can email it to me because he's organized his differently by drug class than what I'm looking at. I think what Dr. Scribner was saying down to line 495 catches a whole bunch of those.
So is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. Do I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And the motion was the drugs he listed out?
Yes.
Okay.
I can repeat real quick for my notes. Alkylating agents, anti-diabetics, those injectables that are GLP-1s is the way I'm actually classifying that. Dronabinol, the anti-metabolites and anti-neoplastic, the plant. CSF, colon stimulating factors, the botulinum toxins, the EPOs, the human growth factors, hormonal anti-neoplastics, PAH drugs, and the one for sickle cell, Adaptivo, I think. And then the chemo small molecule inhibitors, which is Velcade and the generic. So it would be that group. It's about 68 drugs that we haven't already done.
Okay.
Not same time. And you left the hypothalamics out this time.
I think did we grab those?
I thought we grabbed them by price.
No, you're right. We missed those.
And the hypothalamics.
Amy, can we get this sent out to our board? I think we're gonna have to okay this also.
Well, they are, but what we have to do here, what he was saying earlier, Dr. Griffin, is whatever we decide, it's not official till it goes before both of our boards and they
Okay.
approve. So
That's
we're
what
a-
I was thinking.
We are a subcommittee and then the two boards approve it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We don't have a meeting until
October.
about
October.
October.
Yeah.
But we need, can you send this all to us before then?
Yes,
Yeah.
it can be included as part of the board packet. Yes.
Okay, all right.
We'll send it to our board as well ahead. Our next full meeting will be October because we realize Miss Embry and I'll have to work together if we want to try to have another afternoon meeting before we get there, because we know the bigger this list is, the more time our board members are going to have to digest it, to see if they want to pull anything off the report. So we can
Sure.
put all these in the report, and we'll both have other expertise that may go, no, hold on a minute. On the dronabinol, here's a specific reason why we want dronabinol to not have to have a PA, and they could pull it off.
Yeah.
So we're doing more heavy lifting as far as the grunt work of looking at the big list. And then the board gets to basically second guess everything we did and pull anything off they want.
And can we, when we put it in there, can we get here's the ones that we've approved today, here's all the
Yes.
ones.
Yeah, we'll
second
highlight.
tab or highlighted.
So he's basically, we would have the whole list that was proposed, And my plan would be to highlight all of them that the committee has said that the committee would be okay with having a PA. And then that way it's, if we did not highlight something and board members think that it should be highlighted and eligible for PA, they can add it. And anything that they don't like, they could subtract.
Okay, we
And
still
John,
have a motion.
We're just
on the
vetting,
floor.
we're just doing an initial vetting of the list and making a proposal, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion passes.
That, my list is down to 243, John. I don't know how, remember how we started
But
with.
Dr. Jolly, I have no idea what's left on your list. I'm having to look at, this is a drug under this price, but doesn't meet any of these other criteria at this point.
Is there anything on there that you see like beers criteria and age?
I wanted to ask the physicians on here too, like the ones that are Beers criteria. Basically what they're saying is, well, you could prescribe it in somebody over 70 and per the Beers criteria, that wouldn't be appropriate, or it's
Yeah.
potentially going to cause
So
bad side effects.
We've had a little conversation over the years about, Beers criteria, an interesting thing because, and someone will watch this on YouTube and tell me I'm all wrong, but it's a suggested guideline, not necessarily a hard halt. A lot of these drugs, they're saying they want to have a PA criteria on them because they're Beers criteria for over age 70. So right now, you have not chosen it to be eligible to have a PA. Do you want it to be able to have a PA, or does the Beers criteria bother you on that versus the prescriber's discretion?
I mean, we deal with that in a nursing home all the time. And we always have to document why we would use a medication on the Beers criteria. I don't think that should require a PA though.
I think that's the thought process I'm seeing at the table next to me as well.
What I was about to say was, I mean, that is the type of criteria that could be handled through the drug regimen review process.
Yeah, especially like for Dr. Scribner, if you're seeing that at nursing homes, if that does happen to pop on a patient, your consultant pharmacist or your, other clinicians should be pointing out like, hey, we got to document why we're using this drug. And you know it as the prescriber. If you miss it, someone else is going to say, hey, by the way, we need those notes.
Oh yeah, there are so many checkpoints, I'd say, about checks and balances on everything we prescribe. So, I mean, they look at everything, antibiotics, everything. So.
Some of it I would question, like rivastigmine for dementia is a generic. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is used for, and that is the target population.
I know.
Right.
I think basically what we've done so far, as the ones we've said are okay to get a PA on, is anything above, was it 2,500?
I don't think
Was it
you took that
2,000?
2,500 number. Or did we?
I think we did.
No, we did.
Mhm.
So everything above 2,500 on the list. And then all these other classifications.
The therapeutic classes we just voted on.
Yes.
Okay. And then we've already kind of said that the Beers criteria, the ones that are on there because of a reason around Beers criteria, we don't want those to have a PA.
Yeah.
So we're down to 200.
I mean, because when you
That took
get,
31 of them off there.
didn't we say autoimmune? Or did you not?
I feel like the autoimmune was also above 2,500.
Well, you get down in the generics with the, line 519, 520. There's some of the adalimumab biosimilars that are right over 2,000. But I mean, so many of these fit this list that you've already done.
Well, I would say, I had initially proposed that.
Yeah.
But I think we just ended up going with a dollar cutoff of 2,500 and above,
No, you,
I thought.
We
I
did.
don't, I don't, did you vote on your list? You had a motion? In a second?
Yep.
I don't recall.
John, I wrote down that lines 1 through 422. And then we did lines 423 through 495. And that would take us from $2,500 and above.
That's
Okay?
what I have.
And then the last motion we had was the whole group that you mentioned earlier that they voted on. I don't know if there was a motion for beers.
There has not been a motion for beers.
No, it has not been.
And I think, and right now, there's no motion to add beers to it, so that tells me that beers is getting left off.
So are we adding ones on that we see fit now, or are we?
What you've done is these are the drugs that you say you would be okay with them getting an exception and able to have a PA.
I don't know where we're at.
So
I don't know what's left and what isn't left.
anything from 496 up
Yeah, gone.
that is not one of these is on the list. So when I look at like 496 is a calcium regulator parathyroid hormone.
That's all.
Are you counting that in your hypothalamics? Didn't think so. So that one would be, you'd have to choose to add it on if you thought it should have a PA. The next one is a emphysema agent. Protease inhibitor. You'd have to choose if you wanted it to be able to have one. Same thing with 498, 499, 500.
Yeah, I was doing the opposite. I was doing ones that I kind of left the others that I felt like were okay to have a PA and went with ones that I felt like did
That you want to
not.
pull out?
Yeah, that I want to
Oh,
pull
okay.
out and say don't have a PA on.
Okay. We can track it backwards.
Oh, I mean, I don't, do we have a running list? Okay, I was gonna say
Yeah.
599 Multac, 600 Valgan Cyclovir.
So if you guys can hear, as he does this, I'm gonna mark them
Okay.
on my list. So let me get down to 599. And these are ones that he is saying
No PA.
no PA.
And some of these may be included in like the beers list one, because I've got
Yeah.
some of those here, so I apologize.
599, 600.
600, 610.
Okay,
697.
the bump.
Yep.
Okay,
725.
all right.
735.
Okay,
739.
all right.
740.
Okay.
754. 756, 758, 759, 762, 763, which is on the next page. Lidocaine again. 762 and 763.
Different for me.
Okay, so then 764. 766. 793. 795. And then s- 798, 99, 800, 801, 803, and then 807 through the end.
Okay. So I'm going to start working this list backwards. Dr. Boone has said he would not vote for anything below 806 to be able to have a PA. But the 806 he did not include. 806 is just oxycodone. So he's saying that he'd be okay if there was a.
No,
or
wait a
so-
minute.
if.
806 was,
Are you including
yeah,
806?
including 806. Sorry, it was
806 too.
the 805 was Cadian, was a branded. I apologize.
So 805 Cadian, which is, most of us know is a very specific
What did you have as
opiate.
What's 599 on your list?
Multi.
I've never dealt with Aramo, 804. 802 is MS Contin. 797 butorphanol, 796 Exalgo.
Tried to leave some of those that are branded,
They're,
but if they're cheap, I'm
they're
fine.
cheap.
I'm fine striking that. Taking it off the list.
I mean, it's, we could have people that think that every opioid needs a PA, and we could have people that go, that's not the same issue. If you have acute need for opiates and they're covered on the plan, then process it. Back to tadalafil, $35 a month.
And I think, I understand the reason for doing
Yeah.
a PA, they're just for lifestyle uses.
Yeah.
Yeah, except if
Person-
you have someone with lung problem.
Yeah, yeah, I
That's
know.
not lifestyle.
I know. BPH, they need it.
Mhm.
The primary pulmonary hypertension. Modafinil. Oxazone, morphine.
But those are one that you're proposing should not require a PA.
Did not require a PA. That's right.
Right.
And all these others don't have any motion to put them on to allow them to have a PA.
So do we need a, motion for Dr. Boone's list?
Well, he's basically saying he won't vote to let them have a PA, so they're off,
Okay.
basically, is the way I'm taking it, unless
Right.
everybody else overrides him.
Yeah.
Any other drugs between these lists that you guys think really should have a PA?
Yeah, we looked at all the stimulant too, and that.
You've got all these Focalins and Ritalins and Adderalls in here. They're not necessarily, most of them very expensive, but
Yeah, and those are mostly branded ones.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I saw. So if they've got a generic, somebody's needing the brand, the only time I see that coming up right now is just with all the shortages.
Mhm.
And a
Right.
lot of times they're putting those the insurance companies putting overrides in place for,
Yeah, for it to
generics
go
not
through.
available on the marketplace.
Okay.
yeah, that's, we do have some on the pharmacy side where the generic is the preferred drug and you have to get an override for the brand, but we can put in a code because we know it's not like, if we can't order it, we can't deliver it. And we get some interesting audits on it later for recoupment to make sure it was unavailable at the time, but
Yeah.
your pharmacists know they can't get it. Narcolepsy agents, testosterone. Yeah, you did get a bunch of the Beers, drugs,
Yeah.
there's still a couple, but
I'm fine taking the others off too.
yeah.
We got you a good starting point.
Hey. I'm good with whatever y'all decide.
Yeah,
I mean,
Y'all
right,
good?
right now, as you know, Ms. Embry pointed out, and I've got it on my list as well. I mean, we've got hundreds of drugs that we've identified are eligible for PA based on the committee review, and that's everything above line 495. And then Dr. Jolly will get the list highlighted to provide to you all the alkylating agents, the specific GLP-1 anti-diabetics, dronabinol, anti-metabolites and anti-neoplastics, antiplatelet, colony stimulating factors, the botulinum toxins, the EPOs, the growth factors, hormonal anti-neoplastics, PAH, the one drug for sickle cell, the chemotherapy small molecule inhibitors, and the hypothalamics. You guys have already pulled and said, we think these drugs would be eligible for PA. I guess what I would say is there anything else? And Dr. Boone said, here's a whole bunch of drugs that I don't think should have a PA. So we're not taking any motion to add them to that list. Anything else between line 496 and 8 something? I think it's like 810 or something where his kind of cut off the drugs, 806,
He,
805.
805.
And then there's some around the 813s, 820s. Anything else you guys see in those, anybody, pharmacy board, medical board, that you think should be eligible for a PA at this point?
no, I like that list. It's good.
The only thing I would leave on there are branded drugs where there's a generic, and that's just coming from a formulary side. It seems like
Yeah.
that's smart to allow a PA, but I don't.
So Dr. Boone, I don't know if you can hear him. He's saying we could go back. I mean, I could do this as staff and we could identify there are some brand name drugs that have an equivalent generic that he's saying he would be okay with the brand name having a PA because the generic is the preferred product. And I'd point out, it means that they could put a PA on it, not that they have to put a PA on it. They could also just say, we don't pay for the brand name product. We only pay for the generic product.
Yeah.
But it'd be up there. So I don't know if you want to make a motion to that.
Well, I think, yeah, I'll make that motion. I think it's better for patients because then the option is there.
That they could have a PA
That
rather
they
than
could
not
have a
cover it.
PA and just, so they're saying not to cover.
And having been in management on this a little bit, I understand what he's saying. He would rather give the plan a choice that they could cover the brand name with a PA instead of completely excluding it, rather than them saying the brand is excluded, you get the generic or nothing. So his motion would be for us to identify the list of branded drugs that also have generic options that might be a cost savings, and add them to the highlighted list that we would deliver to the board. And it'll probably get another 50 drugs.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I get a second on that motion?
I got just a couple, if I could have
Okay.
just one more second.
Can we take care of this one first, please?
Oh, yeah. So what I'm gonna do is not gonna.
I figure it's a different issue.
Okay, who on the second? This one?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay,
All right, now Dr. Jolly's going to throw another wrench at us.
That's not gonna be a wrench. I just noticed a couple of inconsistencies that, and I think it's based on how these insurance companies classify them.
Yeah.
What's there? There's a couple of other monoclonal antibodies on here, but they're not classified as such.
Hmm.
One was denosumab, which is Prolia. And then there was another Botox on here.
I'm putting all the botulinum toxins on.
It's not classified as a botulinum toxin on
If
this
it's,
sheet.
if it's a Botox, I'm gonna pull it.
Okay, just, it'll be highlighted for you.
Okay.
And then, I think these alpha-1 proteinase inhibitors for emphysema,
Yeah, I saw those.
those should probably require a PA as well. So it's in total just 6 drugs.
Yeah, it's not much.
Right.
So the other monoclonals and the emphysema drugs.
Yeah.
That a motion?
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion passes.
Anything else after I have bored you guys for an hour and a half?
No, I think it's a good start. I mean, we'll let the boards look at it.
I think if we send this, it gives a highlighted list of suggestions, and I think it will help both our boards to determine the drugs that they would want to pull back out of consideration or anything that they would want to put in. So I think for us, it's a whole lot of legwork that makes the future work a little bit easier. I'll keep Ms. Embry posted as to our next submission. I will share the highlighted list back with the, with Ms. Embry to make sure that her notes kind of match my notes on this in the next few days. And then we'll also be happy to share that back with the submitters. It might actually help us with future submissions to be a little bit less large, nothing else. Amy, did I miss anything else for you today?
Nope, like we said, this was the first meeting. Now we know what to expect, how we can move forward in the future. So.
Well,
We'll go
thank
from
you.
there.
Thank you guys so much for getting on with us. I think that we can probably adjourn this one for today. I think we're all a little bit brain dead from staring at all these lists the last couple of days. Thank you much and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, we'll get us off here in just a second.
Do we need a motion to get off?
No, we're good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.